This is Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Hall.
I'm Jeff Allworth.
And this is a live episode audience recording coming to you from Von Ebert Brewing in Portland, Oregon. Where in just a minute, we're going to be talking lagers, award-winning IPAs, mixed fermentation. You guys stopped clapping really fast. Mixed fermentation and being part of a tremendous local brewing scene with Sam Pecoraro, the head brewer here, and Jason Hansen, the lead brewer. And we'll get into it all in just a minute. But first, Jack Hendler of Jack's Abbey is joining me on the line, as he does from time to time. And the brewery is a sponsor of this episode. And of course, we're thankful for that. And we're talking about the brewery's Lager of the World series. And this time, Jack's Abbey is headed to Guatemala. So, Jack, first of all, welcome back. And tell us about this collaboration and how Guatemala got on the brewery's radar.
Absolutely. Yeah, as we explore the world and see what people are brewing, we got brought to Guatemala for this next collaboration. We partnered with El Zapote. We were really curious what craft beer was like in that part of the world. And we were able to have a conversation with them about how they approach craft beer and decided to have a collaboration.
So what is the collaboration? What is the beer itself?
The beer is a coffee-infused golden lager. So really interesting beer. I'm actually drinking some right now. We just canned it this morning, and it's a perfect breakfast beer. So I'm happy to be drinking this right now.
Give us a little bit more info on the beer. What are some of the stats behind it?
So, of course, it's a lager. It's brewed with oats and Pilsner malt in the mash, and then we infused it with a really special coffee. So it has all those nice coffee aromas, but it's enjoyed as a light golden style lager. Nice.
Well, we'll talk more about the coffee when you join us at the bottom of the show. But for now, I'm going to encourage everybody to go visit jacksabbey.com, where you can actually learn more about this beer as well as the brewery. And thanks, Jack. All About Beer is back online and producing original content for beer enthusiasts and professionals. You can visit allaboutbeer.com to see the latest. And if you want to support us in that endeavor, we've set up a Patreon for both readers and professional companies in the beer space. Check out patreon.com/allaboutbeer to learn more. And for additional audio content, search All About Beer on your podcast platform of choice, and you can listen to the shows that are now available. We're able to bring you this show each week thanks to the companies that support independent journalism in the beer space. You can learn more about our surprisingly affordable rates by emailing info@allaboutbeer.com. This is the last, for now, of the shows recorded on location from the Pacific Northwest. It was recorded at Von Ebert Brewing's Glendoveer location on the far edges of Portland, Oregon, and it's situated on a golf course. Von Ebert is a brewery that has been crushing it since the start, making great IPAs and lagers, as well as boasting a terrific blending program. In fact, we discussed some of those beers on the show to illustrate both ingredients and process. It's a brewery with a diverse portfolio that executes on the highest levels and always has something interesting to explore. And prior to the show, Jeff Allworth, my friend and the writer and author and podcast host and world traveler, had been driving me around to Oregon and trying to dissect Von Ebert. And since it was such a conundrum, I invited him to co-host this episode. Happily, it goes off the rails at points. But our guests keep us on track, and they are Sam Pecoraro. He's the head brewer who has been brewing around Portland for 11 years at various breweries, including Burnside, The Commons, Breakside, before joining Von Ebert at their inception in 2018. As head brewer, Sam leads the Pearl District and Glendoveer brewing teams in all quests related to IPA variants, German-inspired lagers, and mixed culture beers. And Jason Hansen, he's the lead brewer and blender who started homebrewing right after college and ended up getting a job at Seven Bridges Organic Homebrew Supply in Santa Cruz, California, before moving on to Sante Adairius Rustic Ales, where he eventually became the head brewer. He was then the lead fermentationologist at Garden Path Fermentation in Burlington, Washington, before joining Von Ebert also in 2018. It's a crowded table that grows a bit more when we're joined later in the show by Madeline McCarthy, who was then a brewer at Von Ebert, but has since started working at 10 Barrel Brewing. There's a lot to unpack in this rollicking show recorded just off the practice green at the course, with an audience putting a dent into the lager taps. Here's our conversation. All right, Sam and Jason, welcome. I don't often start off shows by talking about location, but because of where you are and the uniqueness of being right off of the practice green, does your location here at this golf course, does it at all play into the way that you approach the beers here?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, Clubhouse Lager, which I think we consider one of our flagship beers. This is a American light lager that we're inspired by the course. I mean, this is something that I guess is partly inspired by Miller High Life and fried chicken, and partly inspired by being out on the course. Yeah, absolutely, it does.
You're drinking it, Jeff. You were drinking it.
I have drunk it.
Yeah. And it comes in one of these, what is that, a 20-ounce? Is that a 20-ounce mug? Or is that just a tall 16?
I don't work here, so
Okay.
you're going to have to...
I'll take that question.
Yeah.
It's more than 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it less than 20?
It might be 20.
Okay.
I think full to the top, it's 20, yeah.
Okay. But it has that great old golf imagery to it, and like the name, it kind of plays in, because we talk on this show and in general about how it's difficult for craft to penetrate into other markets, and golf doesn't necessarily seem to have that problem. It's grown over the years. There's new tours that exist now and everything, but the people who drink or who play golf are usually going for that Miller Lite or that High Life or something like that. Have you been able to convert people, do you think, who have come in for a Clubhouse and are now drinking your award-winning Rauch beer or, IPAs or anything else like that?
Yeah,
and does being in Portland help with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if people have gone from Miller High Life to a Rauch beer necessarily or right away.
We hope. That's the goal.
That's a mistake.
Yeah, that's probably more of a slow climb or a slow progression. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, we don't offer another option. So if somebody comes in and says, "Hey, I'd like a Coors Light," or some type of American light lager, yeah, this is the option. And when we put it in front of them, I think people are always receptive to it.
Does that happen here in Portland, where people walk into a brewery thinking that they can get a Coors Light? Because Jeff has been taking me around. You're shaking your head. You have a microphone. Do you know how this works?
Yeah, even in a dive bar, it's hard to find a Bud Light on tap. I mean, it's in Portland, Oregon, Bud Light, Coors Light, it's not common. So, yeah, I suspect people are happy to see this beer.
I think going back to your earlier question, too, specifically at the golf course, people don't necessarily know this location, that we're separate from the golf course, and they think that just, the clubhouse, and so that's hence the name of this beer, and hence we're trying to serve that need. Yeah.
Were you jumping in there or no?
I was not,
okay.
No.
What else works aside from Clubhouse?
To introduce to people who are maybe new to craft beer,
Take that question however you want.
Sure, yeah. A lot of people, ask for amber ale. We don't really brew that, but we have a Vienna lager that's nice and crisp and, has a lot of that same flavor profile as an amber ale does. Our Helles lager is also something that people seem to like as well. It's nice and light, but has more flavor than they might be used to, and it's sort of transitory beer that may be introducing them to some fuller flavored stuff.
All right, so help me out here, Jeff, because they've now mentioned, an amber ale and a Coors Light, and you seem to think that those don't exist here. So what are people thinking of with an amber ale?
Well, I think it's worthwhile mentioning a little bit about the Portland geography and where you guys are, because we're not really in close to downtown Portland out here.
We're West Boise, yeah.
we're out. I mean, golf courses are not in downtown Portland. There's a whole bunch of breweries in Southeast Portland. And if you look at the address here, it says Southeast Portland, or I guess Northeast. We're on the east side, but we're on the way east side. And so, you're going to get a little different clientele here than you would, in the Pearl or in, where we were drinking beer earlier today.
Okay.
So now I've forgotten the question.
No, but what are people thinking that they're looking for when they're looking for an amber ale?
I have no idea. I mean, there is a brewery in Northwest Portland called Hammer and Stitch, which makes an amber ale, and I know that they have discovered that there's a whole generation of people who don't know what amber ale is. So young people come, they're like, "Oh, this is awesome! It's got malts. I like malts," and they don't know that it's a tarnished style from the 80s and 90s.
A tarnished style. Wow.
Yeah, that was harsh. Yeah.
The crowd didn't like that.
The crowd, which is largely filled with brewers right now, is
the boo birds are out.
Yeah. They're going to chase you down the fairway right now with putters.
I love it. We got some amber ale lovers here, represent amber
Would
ale.
you make an amber ale?
Probably not.
Okay.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that it's a
tarnished
style that I don't see where you're saying the word tarnished. I mean, I think any beer can be made well, and any well-made beer has redemption value, and I think an amber ale could be made well. I think some of the clientele, so back to Jeff's point on we're in pretty far eastern Portland here, really suburban almost, not a lot of other stuff going on. Some of the clientele is maybe a little older age demographic, and those are beers that they know as craft beers, and so when they come in here they realize it's a brewery, because a lot of people don't realize it's a brewery. They just think it's a restaurant out in East Portland, and there's not a lot else out here, and so they look to something a little familiar. We don't have that, but we have other styles that we can fill what they want. Yeah.
A lot of people don't know my oeuvre, and I'm on the wrong podcast, and so I'll just say that tarnished in the sense that it is not a popular style anymore, and so breweries don't make it. But it's obviously an awesome style, and I think that's why Hammer and Stitch has found a new audience, and it's a cool thing. It's like it's tarnished in the sense that it became associated with a past era, and so people no longer wanted to make it. But it can be made off.
I'm going to edit that
really
answer out, just so that people think that you only said tarnished style. I'm going to take that whole part out.
Thank you.
And it's great.
I really
and
appreciate
everybody
that.
does know you've been on the show before. Like,
I
people
have.
People know you.
But I haven't been doing my hot takes.
Your hot takes, yeah. We're going to get into hot takes, unpopular hot takes, as we get a little further down into this whole thing.
Is it okay if I ask a question?
Yeah, no, sure, by all means.
Why didn't amber ale evolve? Where I think we had like IPA.
Yeah, Mr. Beer Bible.
IPA evolved, obviously. I mean, from
check out now.
I believe it's ripe for evolution, and I think Hammer and Stitch is doing that. They're making a beer that has so the classic 1980s, 1990s amber ale was very sweet, high attenuation. We didn't have very interesting malts then, so we're talking about 2-row and a big ass load of caramel malt and some Willamette hops, and you're out, right? What they're doing at Hammer Stitch now is putting a nice juicy layer on top of things. They're toning down the amber malt. They're getting a little bit more richness from the base malts. So it tastes a lot more modern, and I think that updated profile is actually quite appealing, and I do think it could evolve. So maybe I should make a pitch. You guys should do something like that. The juicy amber.
All right, so that was actually going to be my question. Outside, before we started, Sam said that he just does spreadsheets now, but Jason does all the work. So if you were going to create an amber ale recipe, Jason, right now, and dial it in, where would you start? How would you want it to be for the the duffers that walk in that want to?
Sure. I'd probably just make it a ale version of Märzen, something like that, where, the very restrained, sea malt additions, heavy Munich malt to have that kind of malty base, and then just enough sea malt, like a darker sea malt, to give it a little, give it that actual amber kind of red color.
What is stopping you from making that beer right now? Is it Sam?
Well, partially, yeah. I mean, we're all on the same train, and we'll be like, we got to sell this beer too, and
yeah.
So a lot of what people want, and a lot of what we hear the most of, like, I want an amber ale, or I want a Hefeweizen. Those people are very loud and very vocal, but they are a very distinct minority also, and so we get a lot of feedback from our service staff saying, like, hey, people are requesting this, and we have made a red ale before, and we have made Hefeweizen before, and these beers just do not sell because that vocal minority is very happy about it, but it's not something that's popular in the market.
Yeah, and I think Vienna Lager fits in with what we enjoy, what we're trying to do, the identity that we're trying to cultivate, and it satisfies the people looking for the amber ale, I mean, it's kind of, it's the best of both worlds, I suppose.
When you think about the evolution of Portland beer, and let's just talk about since Von Ebert opened, though. Jeff was telling me, and I got this impression from even talking with Tom in the early days and Sean in the early days, you guys were thinking about lager and mixed ferm. Like that was going to kind of be the thing. And I know you're still doing that, and there's apparently some cool bottles in front of us, but you're also now doing, really great IPAs, and IPAs that are winning major awards and accolades. And has the DNA of the brewery shifted, or can you be a brewery that does all of the things that you intended to, but also what the market demands, and then do it exceedingly well? Like, have you lost some of those early, those early thrusts for the sake of? Yeah.
No, I don't think the DNA of the breweries really shifted much at all. I think the perception of the brewery has. I mean, when we started making volatile substance, we, internally we thought it was a very good beer, and it did not sell well. That was, right at the beginning of, or I guess maybe a year or two into kind of the hazy IPA, which we make and we love. But I think we just were known for certain things, and then it shifted around. I mean, Jeff describes us as a lager brewery, but I think a lot of people would describe us as an IPA brewery. And, Jason, in a lot of ways, thinks of us as a mixed culture brewery. We're all those things, and I think we always have been. It's just what the public thinks has changed.
We also have two separate breweries each brewery does have a little bit of its own identity, and we kind of focus on different stuff. So, that allows us a lot of flexibility in doing, multiple styles and multiple kind of iterations of beer the way we think it should be done.
Yeah. Do you want to jump in here?
Oh, I just to say that, I do consider, I thought the brewery was going to be a mixed culture lager brewery, and of course you had to please Portland with your IPAs, and then all of a sudden your IPA started winning all these GABF medals, and it's like, well, maybe we're an IPA brewery too. So it was it was quite an impressive evolution. But I still it's a great compliment for me to say that you're a lager brewery, because
is it?
I want to take people. Oh, you want good lagers? I'll take you to Von Ebert, even though they won that GABF medal.
No, I mean, we like that. That's great.
Is it frustrating though? Because I put you in a bucket with that question, and then Jeff sort of reinforced that. Is that frustrating as a brewer to be put in a bucket by people who are not wearing the boots and in the house with you?
No, not at all. I'm just excited if people like any of our beers. I mean, that's. I don't think we necessarily have to be known for anything. We just are excited about, a few different styles, or I guess families of beer. And if anybody enjoys any of them, that's great.
Is there
Are you trying to get me to say something more aggressive?
No, it's certainly not aggressive.
Trying to get a fight going here. I think it's what's happening.
I'm from New Jersey, and I don't do aggressive well. So certainly not that.
Gentle garden stater.
It's all just flowers and tomatoes where I live, and
I know that about you.
It's delightful. But no, it's interesting though, where if some people think of you as an IPA brewer, some people think of you for your mixed ferm, or some people are thinking about you from the IPA, and they're coming for it. If somebody comes into town and they say to Jeff, I want to go drink really good lagers, and he's going to bring them here, but then somebody goes to, I assume there's another writer in town. I don't know, and they say I want a really good IPA, and they bring you here because of the GABF medals and your renown. Like, does that make your job harder as brewers because you're now, or is it just you're always going to be operating on a certain level where every beer that comes out is going to meet your internal specs, like what makes your soul feel good as brewers kind of thing, as opposed to we're a really good lager brewery and we're proud of our IPAs, but or vice versa? It's a loaded question. It's a totally loaded question.
I mean, I think we're proud of all of our beers. We wouldn't put them out if we weren't. It's a tough question. I don't know.
Yeah. Sam wants nothing to do with this anymore.
Yeah.
No, I think I tried to already answer.
Yeah.
It.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next question.
Okay. What do
can
you
edit
got?
that out.
What do you got?
Well, I do wonder. So I interviewed you guys at the start of this year, and I was curious. Like, so not only for people who are listening to this podcast, not only did you win the GABF gold medal for American IPA, but you won the Oregon Beer Awards gold medal for IPA with the same beer in the same year. And in Oregon, the Oregon
it was a different batch, just to clarify.
That's right.
They were
not exactly the same time.
Many months apart. Yeah.
That's right. Which is actually more impressive, right? So that's like a humble brag in a weird way. It's like, well, we'll do another batch and we'll win another award. That'll be awesome. And I do wonder. It was an incredible accomplishment. I don't think we'll. So in Oregon, for people who don't know, the OBAs are a really big deal here, and the people who win OBAs are respected, and people who make good pilsners and good IPAs, they enter that competition, and you guys are all talking to other people. You're talking to brewers in town, and you're talking about IPAs and pilsners, and to win that competition where your peers are judging you is a really big feather in your cap. So to have won that same award twice, or 2 awards in the same year, is really impressive. And I'm curious what since you didn't set out to be an IPA brewery, you have kind of a broad base. You're interested in mixed fermentation lagers. There are mixed fermentation beers. You're interested in lagers. We have Madeline McCarthy over there who made a really, really nice saison that did very nicely. So you can do a lot of stuff, and I'm wondering how those things inform each other. Like how does knowing how to make a good lager make brewing an IPA different, or like what do those things build on each other?
Yeah,
if you're not focusing.
Yeah, it's all process. I mean, we talk way more about process than we do about recipe development or concept development. Absolutely, they inform each other. I think they may be different processes, but I think there's a whole bunch of different checkpoints within them that overlap.
I think one of the proudest things that we've accomplished more than the beers and the awards and stuff is the team we've built here at Von Ebert. The brewing team is incredible, and we constantly push each other every day. From our our newest cellar person, this is her first week, to Sam and I that have been here for 4 years. Just the whole camaraderie in the brewery and the whole continuous improvement kind of lifestyle that we live while we're at work informs all of our beers. And so everybody's always asking questions, always nitpicking little things, always trying to make, even if it's a process improvement that improves the beer by 0.01%. I mean, we're all behind that, and it's a total buy-in by our team. And I think I can speak for Sam too. I think that's like probably the thing we're the most proud of in this brewery.
I was going to ask you about awards, but I'd rather kind of go down that path, because the awards are nice and it gets you the recognition and you probably feel good in the brew house. But if you're only feeling good on the days immediately after somebody has given you a trophy or a tap handle or a plaque on the wall kind of thing, it's going to fade pretty quickly. So building that community inside of the brewery, the thing that we don't see until the final product comes out. These are high-pressure environments, and there's a lot of competition out there, and there's a lot of worry about, the economics and everything else that can seep into the brew house. What are a few things that you do to just go a little bit deeper on the point that you just made? And I want to hear from the both of you on this, but what are a few things that you do to really make sure that core team culture stays intact in a meaningful way and then moves forward in a meaningful way?
Yeah, I think open communication, being extremely honest, holding each other accountable. I wrote a really long, probably annoying email this morning, and Maddie's laughing over there. But I think it's really important to recap when, when we're trying to troubleshoot together and go back and do you want to take the microphone?
we picked up on that. That actually got through on the mics, man. Yeah.
To go back through and kind of talk through, okay, what happened when we were trying to, replace this pump seal, for instance, and talk through it and ask everybody, what could we have done better this time? How could we have been more prepared? And then, I write this long email, and then Maddie comes back with 2 amazing ideas that are going to save us a ton of time and waste. And, I hope that, everybody else on the team feels just as comfortable as she does in that environment, and being able to all have a voice and constantly, work together to drive the machine forward, I guess.
Yeah.
We want everyone to have buy-in on our team, and we want everyone to feel like a part of the process and not just another cog in the machine, because, brewing from the outside can seem like, this glamorous job. Oh, you're just drinking beer all day, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, it's
that's writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, it's really hard, labor intensive work that's, a lot of the time seems like glorified janitorial work. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not as glamorous as some people seem. And so at the end of the day, we want to make sure everyone is working hard, but also realizes the goals we're setting out in the brewery to make the best beer we can, with all the limitations that, every brewery has, and to want to come back the next day and make it even better. And, getting back to my point where, as a team, we feel good, we feel comfortable, criticizing each other, not criticizing, but, giving critical improvement advice to, and we just like hanging out together too. And I think that the team we've built is just so incredibly awesome, and we hang out on our days off and stuff. I think that's so much more important. Like, life is more important than work and beer, and but obviously work is a part of it, and so we're trying to build that environment to where we can make everybody happy with that.
Is that something that is wrapped up in Portland beer culture overall?
That's a great question. This is the only brewery I've worked at in Portland, so it's from the outside I could say things about other breweries, but I've never worked in another brewery in Portland, so I don't know how to judge Von Ebert versus other Portland breweries.
No, yeah.
I think it varies. A lot of that is goal dependent, size dependent. There's different situations, and everybody approaches it differently.
All right.
That was my most diplomatic response I could possibly conjure.
All right.
How much do the brewers here talk and hang out, outside of work?
Too much constantly.
Between breweries?
Yeah.
A lot, yeah, for sure. Like, a lot. I mean, Portland is a huge beer town, but as a city, it's relatively small as far as cities go, and there's a lot of breweries, but the industry is still relatively small, especially people who are brewers at breweries. So everybody knows each other. Everybody sees each other at the Oregon Beer Awards, or just around town drinking at bars and stuff. And so everybody I feel like breweries as a whole are pretty welcoming and inviting in the brewer community.
More in a moment, but first, this episode is sponsored by Jack's Abbey Brewing and its newly released Lagers of the World, Destination Guatemala, which is a golden lager with Guatemalan coffee. Craft beer is a fledgling movement in the country right now, and it's being led by El Zapote Brewing. Together, the 2 breweries created a coffee golden lager with imported beans. You can learn more about the beer and where to find it near you by visiting jacksabbey.com. Should we open some of these?
Yes.
Definitely.
Why not?
Okay.
Jason's going to take the lead on both of these.
All right.
Have at it.
Let's drink this one.
By the way, John,
Yeah.
while we're cracking things, I'm drinking a fine Rauch Helles. I don't know if you knew that this was on tap here.
I saw that
or
it
that
was-
you might have some interest in it. I don't know anything. Just guessing.
I was asked if it was on special for me, and I said I can't imagine that's the case. But I'm jealous of your beer right now.
That's
Jeff.
just how much the Rauch Helles fame precedes you.
Personally, I think that Rauch beers should take over the world.
Do you?
Yeah.
Are you just pandering on this podcast right now?
A little bit, because I just listened to your last episode on my ride over here. But in all seriousness, I think Jason and I would love
Yeah, if we could
they
just
were a much bigger market
recreate
share.
Spezial or Schlinkerlau in Portland, we would do that. Yeah. Or I would do that.
Could that work? I mean, Matt Van Wyck's in the crowd. We have Alan Sprints is in the crowd.
Nice.
We have great brewers in the crowd right now. Other brewers have showed up as well. And Jeff has been taking me around, and you have breweries that fit into various niches and that are doing their own thing. Could there be an all-Rauch beer brewery that could survive? If it was going to happen in the U.S., I feel like it could only happen in Portland, Oregon, not Maine.
No, I mean, no.
I agree.
So
I agree with your thesis, and yes, it would not survive.
So for how enlightened your beer culture is, they're still not ready for the Bomberg treatment.
No, the Bomberg is the only place where a Rauch beer brewery could survive, I think. Safe to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if we have 2 on at one time, we are super stoked on that. Yeah. Yeah, having a full board of 20 or something.
Who is not super stoked when you have 2 on at one time?
It's a great question.
Everybody else.
Some of the brewers, yeah. I mean, it's even amongst brewers, like it's a pretty divisive issue, like the Rauch.
Internally.
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple of our brewers who are not so much into it, and
I would like to see a go of it. On allaboutbeer.com, Alan Sprints reached out after Hair of the Dog closed that he was hoping that a brewery would come in and take over that space. And I think that I can think of no better place in Portland for an all-Rauch beer brewery than in the former Hair of the Dog space.
Well, and I have to say, like, Adam has a little Rauch malt in it, doesn't it? A little, a little bit of smoky malt. So it's like it's deep in our bones here. Yeah.
And Alan is saying, please don't say this. I want to make rent. All right, what are we drinking here?
We're drinking a beer called Under the In-Between. It's a mixed culture. We call our mixed culture beers heritage beers here. So it's an oak-aged heritage beer, blended and then further conditioned on yuzu zest, yuzu juice, and Szechuan peppercorn.
This is fun. Yeah, you gotta come grab some. This is Alan is walking up with glasses.
If you all want to open that bottle, you can just take it, and everybody can share it.
Yeah. Alan, you really don't want a Rauch beer brewery in
And you probably got 3 seconds until that comes out the top.
Oh, yep.
That's the right answer.
No. Nah, he knows what he's doing. Why would I tell him how to?
He's a professional walking away. All right, so when you're building a beer like this, where do you start?
Generally, we start with blending stock, and so we have mature oak-aged mixed culture beer ready to go, and then kind of taste it, blend it, have ideas, and kind of think of other ideas, maybe culinary ideas, where I have a big old spreadsheet of notes on potential beer. Adjunct ingredients or things like that for these type of beers, and when we find sort of the right blending component for that, and then we pull the trigger, seasonally appropriate, just go for it.
So when you have that list going of the adjunct ingredients, where are you drawing that inspiration from? How does something get on the list? Is it?
It can be, usually it's a culinary inspired thing. Either it's a item I've had at a restaurant, or just I read about something, and the 2 ideas seem to go well together. Generally, we'll get some ingredients on hand and do bench trials and make sure it's actually going to work before we go whole hog on it. But yeah,
has there been something that you had on that list that you did a bench trial on that you thought was really going to work and then just did not?
Actually. Perfect segue. The next bottle that we have here was an example of that. Yeah, we have a kind of
the idea before this bottle was an example.
Yes, sorry.
It's not what's in the bottle.
We're about to try one of your failures, which is awesome.
We gotta clear out the stock.
The bench trial failed.
Get your glasses ready, everybody.
The beer turned out all right. The next beer we're gonna drink is a collaboration beer we did with BottleWorks, bottle shop up in Seattle.
Yeah.
It's a double fruited kind of mixed culture tart beer with Marionberry and cherries, and we had the idea of doing a sort of savory herbal component in this beer as well. some initial ideas were like rosemary or sage or what's one I always forget, the one I really wanted to do.
Anise hyssop?
Anise hyssop, yeah.
What was it?
Anise hyssop.
I don't know if I know.
Yeah, it's this herb that's kind of a mix between like basil and mint. It's really cool. But it just like we did a bunch.
Frenetic.
Yeah, we did a bunch of bench trials with all of those things and just like didn't work out. So we're like, the beer with the fruit by itself is great, and so we don't, no risk. There's no chance taking a risk on that. So yeah, the beer is what it is, and we're stoked on it.
Yeah, can we just talk a little bit about this beer, which is a lovely, bright. It's very bright. So the yuzu really is working off the sort of acidity, the elements of the acidity, and then the peppercorn adds a little base note kind of underneath it, which works really nice too, because it's almost ready to explode out of the glass, and then you need a little something to kind of come down there. So I'm curious, following up on John's question, like, do you start with the idea of you've got base beers and you're tasting things and you're thinking, oh, this could use a little yuzu and a little peppercorn, or do you start with the yuzu and peppercorn and then look for the beers that will support that, or how does, like,
it could go
which
either
direction is it?
Yeah, it could go either way. Just kind of depends on where we're at with the beer or what idea. Sometimes it's like I have this idea, I know this idea is going to be great, let me find the beer for that. And other times it's like, this beer is speaking to me, blended with that one, it's really speaking to me, and then it's making me think of this. So, there's not one method, I don't think. It just kind of depends on where the beers are at and, what I want to accomplish with each bottling we do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for some people who are, when they see mixed fermentation beers and they see multiple ingredients on there, they feel like it might be confused and a little bit over complex. This is a really nice, simple beer where the flavors really work together, and you get a kind of a clean, very pure, bright vinous profile. It's a very nice beer.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. I think our approach to adjuncts in general is that it is a bit of a marketing thing. Like we actually, I don't believe we've released a mixed culture bottled beer that didn't have something in it, whether that was dry hops or fruit or spices or something like that. But we don't want it to ever be overbearing. We want the spices to be subtle. And if I had, my druthers, the spices you wouldn't be able to pull anything directly out of it if you didn't know what was already in it. It would just be an accent, another flavor that's in the already complex, acids and phenolics and Brett character that's in the beer itself. I got you.
Yeah, that's great. That's sort of the Belgian approach. Like tuck things in that already work with the native flavors.
We're look at that. It's quality audio. You guys didn't get that the same way, but it's going to show up really great.
Sam's always very afraid that these beers are going to gush, but we're pretty good at carbonation here. So,
talk to me about your house culture and how it's developed over the years that you've been here.
Sure. Yeah. I feel like it started like a lot of cultures do. When we started out, we had a lot of oak. We have 4 30-barrel foeder crafters, foeders, excuse me. Some punch-ins, some other smaller foeders, some wine barrels. And so each barrel, when we started this program, kind of got its own thing, and they've evolved since then. So some of them were commercial cultures that we bought, either Brettanomyces or Brettanomyces blends that we created ourselves, mixed cultures that we bought commercially, and a lot of them were also just built up from bottle dregs of beers that we really enjoyed drinking.
Yeah.
And so now we have this pretty diverse culture in our oak that we can use to blend into kind of what we want, whether we want it to be more Brett forward, whether we want it to be more acid forward. We kind of have a lot of tools in our arsenal at this point.
Is there anything that you think the surrounding grounds have brought to the beer?
Probably not. Okay. I may say some heretical things here, but I think a lot of that, the sort of terroir of mixed culture beer is a little marketing forward. I think that, but I also think in a way it takes away from what the brewers are doing, because the brewers are the ones that are creating these things. It's not just some random like dust motes in the air, These were intentional beers, and I think across the world it's that way, and I think a lot of these sort of romantic ideas of these type of beers are just that. It's a little romanticism, a little marketing, and which is great because everybody needs to sell beers. So I'm not like, begrudging anybody who does this kind of stuff. But
the folks who sell the beer are like saying, please buy the beer.
Sorry, don't listen to this podcast
talking.
if you're trying to buy our beer. Yeah.
You're like nobody does, so like you're totally you're safe. What is the second beer that we're drinking right now?
So this is the one I was talking about earlier. It's called Living on Borrowed Time. It was a collaboration with Bottleworks up in Seattle, and it was Brandon, who is one of their main people up there. He came down. We tasted through a bunch of oak, and then decided on a base recipe and decided sort of where we wanted to go with the blend, and then we further conditioned it on some Marionberries. And like I was saying before, we were potentially thinking of adding a spice or an herb, and just didn't work out. We thought the beer by itself was great, and so I think that's an example of just letting the beer speak for itself and not trying to be too hands-on with it. Also, yeah.
Did you want to jump in, Sam?
No.
Okay.
No. No. Jason can speak to all of these beers, quite frankly, 100 times more accurately and eloquently than I can. So.
And did we talk about how this facility, maybe I just zoned out when this happened, that is where you're making these kinds of beers? So you kind of have...
You have one job for 45 minutes.
I know. But you know me. You invited me. I mean, it's all on you, man.
It's what cold IPA does the night before.
That's right.
Jeff, you should come on the show. It's going to be great.
I know it was.
And then you planted all of these questions.
Will you regret
about
this? Yes,
about the brewery and its trajectory? And poor Sam has shut down based on our line of questioning early on in the show. And poor Jason now has to shoulder the whole weight of the whole thing. I'm going to try to pull us out of it. But
that's basically daily life in the brewery.
Okay,
he's equal to the task, though. He's doing great, so it's awesome.
He wrote a really firm email today. So that can be taxing. But
it is.
Yeah. But you guys have a whole separate facility here, which is really designed to do these kinds of beers, and so you have two facilities, and that probably helps you have a little focus in the brewery, but also gives you a little bit more control over how these beers are going to look, and how does that all work out?
I mean, I'm the lead brewer here at this facility, so at the Glendoveer facility where we're currently sitting, we make all of our oak aged beers and most of our seasonal lagers. So it's kind of two different threads on the spectrum there. But I mean, I'm here day in, day out. I'm tasting these beers daily, so I kind of have my finger on the pulse of what's going on in the oak.
Let me just ask this, because I think this is a really interesting thing. In terms of your team approach that you talked about earlier, you rotate brewers around, so they actually you're not siloed here, right? Like you guys share that you come around and
yes and no. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that was a bad question. Edit this out, John.
I had a really good question loaded up, and you're like, my question's better because I live here, and they shut you down.
I thought it was a great question.
It was
a great question. And I see Maddie shaking her head. Nope.
Had it been in the affirmative, it would have been.
I know.
But
sorry.
now it's...
Well, maybe it's good radio.
No, Jason,
That's all I know.
Personally, I don't really spend a lot of time with the other facility, but some of our other brewers, we do travel around a little bit, yeah. It's one of those things where we get in the weeds at each facility, and becomes kind of a jack of all trades, master of none situation when we move brewers around too much, where everybody kind of knows what's going on at each location, but doesn't really know the full spectrum of what's going on day to day. And so, but we have a lead brewer at each location who kind of is there at each, is there 100% of the time and knows what's going on as far as each location. Yeah.
All right, but so here's what I was going to ask, because you were talking about checking in on the wood, and then when you were talking about this beer that we're drinking right now, of selecting the oak. And I think about Alan's beers, and I think about Matt's beers, who's sitting in the audience right now, and the importance that the wood itself plays in the beer. Mm-hmm. I've heard some brewers call it the fifth ingredient, and that's beyond just, this used to be a Pappy Van Winkle barrel, or we got this from a cool winery, or we had Foeder Crafters toast it the way that we wanted it, that kind of thing. There's all sorts of different things, but where do you want the wood to be present in your beers, and what are you looking for as you are crafting these? What are you looking for to help achieve that?
Sure. Great question. I think so. We there you go. We don't have a spirit barrel age program at the moment. So
and Maddie didn't shake her head sadly at you when you asked that question.
This is why I sit this way. So yeah.
So that's going to be my answer is going to be totally like mixed culture, inclusive.
Okay.
We're not looking for a lot of oak, to be honest, in most of our beers. Most of the oak we have is 500-liter puncheons, which are formerly used wine barrels, mostly red wine. And a lot of that oak kind of vanilla and tannin character is not in there anymore. And so it's a vessel for allowing proper oxygen ingress for our mixed culture. Our large foeder crafters foeders, we bought them new, and so each iteration of beer we've taken out of them has had less oak. We got them the lightest toast, the most steamed we could get them. We steamed them ourselves, and really we weren't looking for a lot of that oak character out of there. They're just great vessels for holding the mixed culture. Going forward, that may change, and we may want to have some more oaky type stuff to blend in at certain levels. But for right now, it's big tannin, big vanillin, big just like lumber character is not what we're going for in the beers.
Do you want to jump in here?
Just only to the extent that I'm curious, like, to apply this to the beer that you have here. Like, how long is this in the wood, and how much of that oxygen ingress are you looking to interact with the wild yeasts and stuff? Like, how much does that play a role?
Most of the beer, it really depends. That's such a boring cliche answer, but from 6 to 18 months generally in oak, depending on the culture, depending on what the ratio of bacteria to Brett to sac is in that barrel. I will say we are doing mostly secondary fermentation, if you will. So it's fermented clean with a single culture in stainless, then transferred over to oak, and then that's where the culture is added. Then lets it do its thing in there. It just kind of depends on when the beer speaks to us and when it's ready.
All right, so being mindful of time, and there's a room of people who want to drink beer and have some food.
Drinking beer got applause. Just noted.
You are an award-winning IPA brewery. You are the lager brewery that people go to, the geeks go through. You are making mixed ferm beers that are exciting and vibrant and interesting. You are multifaceted as a brewery, and we can't put you into one bucket, nor should we. Where do you, Sam, want to focus the next part of your brewing education? What's interesting to you right now that you want to dive into a little bit deeper so that you can keep pushing this forward and creating these sort of confounding conversations where it's they're an IPA brewer, they're a lager. You're ultimately, where's your focus? Where's your desire to learn these days?
John Hall had no idea that he just asked for the most boring answer he'll probably get on any podcast he ever has.
You want me to kill the mic? Is that
no? It'll be great.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for coming out. Yes,
I'm super excited about it, but I don't know if anybody else will be. No, really supply chain. I mean, everybody's laughing because they're like, "Oh, that's so boring."
In fact, Mitch Steele just said that to me not too long ago.
Well, if I'm saying anything that he said, then I think I'm probably on the right track in my career. I hope. I just went to Germany for a week with Hop Quality Group to really try and understand what's happening from farm through supply all the way through shipping to the U.S. and what's happening to our hops the entire way. I want to understand all of that, and hopefully next year maybe get to go to New Zealand. And I think hops are just a very small portion of the bigger picture for us. Maybe some of our beers don't have as much hops in them, or more fruit focused, but really just sending the company in a direction where we understand what's happening at all points for all ingredients. And then that's probably a lifetime of work right there. So I'm excited to spend the next 20 years doing that. And then, yeah.
Jason, I want to ask you the education question, but because I've been traveling around in the Pacific Northwest, and it's hop harvest time, and it's fresh hop beer time, and the hop quality group that you brought up has been instrumental over the last 15, 20 years since it was founded, of small brewers really having a place at the table with the hop growers about what you all expect. Can you just go a little bit deeper about the sort of the evolution for any enthusiasts or brewers that are listening of like what the hop quality group hopes to achieve in the next few years and maybe even beyond if you're at that point yet?
Sure. Wow, that's a lot of pressure, because I think the handful of brewers that started the hop quality group, really are all people I look up to and admire. It's a lot about cultivating relationship with farmers and suppliers, and understanding supply chain, and lot tracking and food safety, and really just getting a dialogue going. I think a ton of progress has been made in the last 10 years, and we've only been a member for 3 or 4 years now, but it's also an educational resource and a developmental resource, and I think really just building off that in the next 5 years or so, and getting more members and getting the word out, and trying to improve the entire farm to glass.
Is that something that can be translatable to the consumer?
Sure.
To the drinker?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think it is right now, but I think that obviously the consumer expects food safety. I hope so. And the more that we can dial that in and make that perfect.
We're at the tail end of the era of exploding cans, so maybe not.
Yeah, I guess I almost think it's better if the consumer never has to think about it.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, indirectly through quality too, though. I mean, hop quality group, right? I mean,
oils over alpha. For sure.
The focus is to get the best product for breweries to use to pass on to the consumer. I mean, we're not doing this in a vacuum. We're doing it to make the best beer for the consumer. Yeah.
All right. So the education question: where do you want to have your focus in the near future, Jason?
That's easy because we talk about it a lot.
Weekly.
Yeah, me and Sam talk about it a lot.
Is this you trying to get on sabbatical? Is this?
To
go to Bamberg, to take over Alan's space to
Yes.
open up the
Yes.
very first
Von
Ebert.
Ebert Germany. Yeah. I don't know how we'd be perceived over there, but with the
Von Ebert route.
Yeah, very aristocratic over there. I don't know how they.
Everybody's very confused. Every T-shirt that I had, they would say, "What does this mean, Von Ebert? That doesn't make any sense."
In the brewery, I'm kind of in the next few years going to be focusing on our sensory program and sort of formalizing and establishing that. As far as we're a pretty small brewery at this point. We hope to get a little bit bigger in the near future, and I'm going to be focusing a lot on sensory things, training brewers, doing a lot of just sensory education within the company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jeff, you've been on this show before. In my backyard.
Exactly. I was about to say.
You get to come
Jersey.
You get to come to all the exotic locations. Did I ask you the green door question when you were on the show?
I don't recall. Actually,
I don't recall either.
Based on the green door, you'd have to ask the question, and
Okay.
I can tell you if I answered it before.
All right. So, on this show, the premise is that during the pandemic, my wife and I started rewatching a show called The Good Place, and I hope people are. Yeah. All right. So
Awesome.
people are. Yeah. And on the last season of the show, there's a concept of a green door that's introduced, where you can walk through the door and be any place at any time with anybody that you want to be. So I'm going to put this to all three of you, because I don't know if I asked you when you were in the backyard, but you don't remember. So
I think you did, and I think I know what I answered, and I may give you a different answer this time.
Perfect. That's great. That's the beauty of the green door. So if you could walk through if we could finish this conversation and there's a green door on this plane of existence that you could walk through and be in any pub or any brewery anywhere in the world with anybody that you wanted, where would you want to go? Who would you want to be with? And what would you like to be drinking? And Jason, I'm going to start with you.
At any time in history?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to be...
Or like right now it doesn't matter. It's a green... It doesn't... yeah.
Sure. I'm going to go historical with this. I'm going to say I'd like to be in Athens in the time of Alexander the Great when he was being taught by Socrates. I'd like to know that conversation. And drinking some weird wine or something, like some herbal, weird resin wine or whatever they were drinking back then, because our palates today have no idea what that actually tasted like.
Yeah.
And just those conversations. Hopefully I would be speaking Greek.
Sure.
Also.
The green door provides.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
I don't understand. Can you speak English?
Yeah.
Right.
And then
there is that issue.
And then they'd ship you off to Rome to feed you to the lions as a heretic. That would be great.
Yeah.
Sam was just checking his answer on Google. So Jeff, I'm gonna go to you.
So I'm pretty sure I was pandering before, and I said I would like to be at the Schlenkerla pub, which is the 600-year-old pub in
when you
when
you were at my house. That's what you were.
I think that's probably what I answered. I'll give you a different answer this time. If we're going, I don't think you told me that it could be temporal shift. Like I didn't know I could go back in time.
I think it's implied.
Well,
some people have done. I've had a lot of people who have said, "I want to go drinking with Michael Jackson." I've had a lot of people who have said, "I wish I could bring my grandparents back from the dead to show them." It's,
Yeah. I'm assuming if there's a magic door, it can probably also go to different times.
I'm a dim bulb. You gotta walk me through these things. You gotta be explicit. I didn't get that. I've been transfixed by early Vienna lagers for the last few years, and I would like to go to Vienna 1860. Like Anton Dreher has really dialed it in. He's finally starting to make some awesome beer. I want to taste. I want to go to the have a Schwecketer Vienna lager. So I'm going to go to Vienna 1860. That's
who are you with?
I'm with you, John.
All right. I'm going to need you to sign some paperwork
you
before.
You guys are doing a podcast, and they're like, "What the hell is all this stuff?
What is this magic equipment?" Yeah. I'm walking around looking for an extension cord. Yeah.
And neither of us speak German, so it's going to be really awkward. But we're going to pull it off somehow.
All right, Sam. Final word to you.
I've been asked this question before, not the exact same thing, but definitely.
Have you been on the podcast?
No, I have not. No.
Who's stealing my shit?
Carl Sagan for sure.
Oh yeah. Definitely. All right. Fine.
Would absolutely love to sit and have any beer with him, but I don't know. We'll probably go with.
Cream ale. Genesee cream ale.
I actually was thinking Genesee cream ale. Yeah. A Jenny cream ale with Carl Sagan on the moon. Yeah.
That's probably that's the most unique answer that I've gotten.
Yeah, I was thinking like Ithaca Club or something like that, but
Utica Club.
Sorry, was it?
Utica Club. Utica Club.
I think that shows my age.
Carl
I'm
Sagan.
just a little bit off.
That is the worst. That is the worst enveloping clue.
Yeah, that's right. You might as well be in an awesome pub because you're like there's no oxygen there, so you're gonna die. So you might as well be in a great pub right off the bat.
Who else is asking this question?
Nobody on a podcast.
Oh, okay,
I think
good.
This was actually a game that we played while some of our team was out having a beer one time.
Okay. All right.
I think last time I said Genghis Khan.
All the great questions start in a pub. That's like,
They do.
Chin strokers.
They do. So let's go to the pub and continue the great conversations. Jason and Sam, thanks so much for doing this. Jeff Allworth, thanks for pinch hitting and hanging out and for being a great tour guide and for
thank you for having me, and we have to do this the next time in Bamberg or someplace.
Exactly.
Like,
and thanks to Von Ebert and for everybody for coming out tonight and listening to the podcast.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
I was visiting Von Ebert in support of the Craft Brewery Cookbook. It's available now where fine books are sold, so please go get a copy. And if you have guest suggestions or feedback, you can always email me. It's John Hall, that's JOHNHOLL @allaboutbeer.com, or you can get with me on Twitter @John_Hall. All About Beer is also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just follow along at All About Beer. And of course, This Week in Rauch Beer is also online. The Facebook group is easy to search, and on Twitter and Instagram, it's at TW Rauch Beer. We're able to bring you the show each week thanks to the companies that want to support independent journalism in the beer space. If you'd like to learn more about our surprisingly affordable rates, please reach out to info@allaboutbeer.com. Speaking of that, as promised, Jack Henler is back with me right now. Jack's Abbey is a sponsor of this episode, and I hope you'll give them a closer look. And we're talking about the Lagers of the World series, and this time it's Destination Guatemala, which is available now. And Jack, coffee plays a huge role in this beer. And I understand that you had some rare and award-winning and some super fresh beans sent to the brewery, and then you roasted them locally. Tell me more about this coffee and how it ultimately presents in the beer itself.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we learned about El Zapote is that they really try to make partnerships with the local agricultural community. And one of their close friends was a farm called Finca Ratana that's not too far from their brewery. And we, as three businesses, collaborated to make this beer and import those beans from this farm.
So when you're putting it into the beer itself, what kind of flavor, aside from coffee, do these beans contribute to the final beer?
Well, one of the really cool things about this coffee collaboration is that we actually imported these beans unroasted and then found a local roaster to roast them for us. And that was from Fuel America here in Worcester, not too far from the brewery.
Mm-hmm.
And what this allows is to use the coffee that's been roasted really within the exact window in which we want from that process. So we got them roasted in Worcester, and then approximately 1 week later, we're using them in the beer. And you get just this lovely, light fruity nuttiness, and obviously a very light roast character. So it is a golden beer, so it doesn't have any roast character from the malt. So all that roastiness that does come through is from the coffee.
That's exciting. Well, I'm looking forward to trying this, and I'm sure everybody else is as well. So a reminder, go check out jacksabbey.com, where you can learn more about this beer and all of the other lagers that the brewery has on offer. And Jack, thanks again for being on the show, and thanks to the brewery for being a sponsor of this episode.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All About Beer also has a podcast channel now. You can search and subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday, and the BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. And one more time, don't forget, go visit allaboutbeer.com. As for this show, Mitch Weber does the music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Hall. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'm going to be back again to drink beer and to think beer.